Well, I continue to be saddened by the fact that they put so little effort into the whole backstory of the very first heroes. I can't pass up an episode that kind of covers Karin, because obviously Karin is best girl, so I'll take what I can get if I can get best girl in an entire episode, well, mostly an entire episode. But this is my thoughts on Yuki Yuna as a hero, the Great Mankai chapter, episode 9. So let's jump into it. I should have kind of predicted this aspect because we kind of left the last episode going back to the Sentinels. And so obviously my assumption is that as we get into this particular story arc, it's going to be the Sentinel's perspective of what happened with the entire Shinkan wedding aspect. And I should have known based on that we'd probably get more Keren, which we technically did, as we finally see the two of them come together in this episode. But starting things out, we get a perspective of the Sentinels as they're being told again that they are going to be covering the Shinkan wedding, protecting the heroes from the invasion of the foes while they do the ceremony. At the same time, we do get a brief little scene with Mibuki confronting the Taisha and asking them about this entire situation. What exactly is going on? And of course, they won't reveal anything to them. But they did reveal the fact that apparently this big tower they keep kind of meeting in is the Palace of 1,000 Views, and apparently they gave this name to it based on the fact that from its perspective, you can see thousands of different things that are happening in the city. And this comes into play later on as we find out that the Miko, the priestesses, all these different individuals have been essentially preparing it for this big cannon attack that it'll essentially use. Which, again, I don't remember them technically showing in the hero chapter when they were fighting at that last battle, this big cannon go off. But I don't know, maybe we were watching something else and the cannon actually took something else out. I'm sure that they'll probably do that. But also in this conversation, Mibuki asked, what happened with this whole fire offering ceremony that you guys were talking about doing? Why is Aya still alive? I had these foggy memories, but now I kind of remember everything. What happened? And then she reveals to her, look, yes, the heroes did something to prevent it from having to happen. So, Keren, especially, apparently did a lot. So, again, hitting back on Mibuki and the relationship she had with Karin. And then for a significant portion of this episode, we focus on Karin as this is right after they learned about the curse that Yuki Yuna has. And Keren obviously is struggling with this because she had this encounter with her. Remember, way back in the hero chapter that we watched, I don't know how long ago. Again, this is a whole problem with how they place this. Karin tried to get Yuki Yuna to tell her what's going on, but Yuki Yuna couldn't tell her. And Karin obviously thought that she couldn't trust her with that information. And so she kind of burst out on her and ran away. This is that moment where she's kind of feeling that regret because obviously she yelled at Yuki Yuna and then kind of find out Yuki Yuna was struggling by herself. And now she wants to do something to kind of fix it. And the struggle that she's having pushes her to transform and go to the barrier and yell at the gods like, look, I'm sick of this. We're sick of suffering. Come at me. I'm tired of this whole thing. But while she's out here kind of struggling with this, she ends up seeing the Sentinels coming in and confronts them, and then finding out that, Mibuki is part of the Sentinel group. And really does hit heavy on the fact that these two sides don't know what each other are doing. Obviously, the Sentinels know who the heroes are, but it doesn't seem like the heroes know what the Sentinels are, what the Sentinels are doing. So as Mibuki confronts her, knowing this knowledge of how Karin and the rest of the heroes saved Aya, she's asking her, don't you know about us? Don't you know what the Sentinels are? And she's like, no, we've never been told. Which I thought this would be one of those little moments where they come together, like, even though we have these differences, even though you became a hero and I couldn't become a hero, even though I've been fighting as a Sentinel and you haven't, we can come together knowing the Taisha are terrible. The terrible Taisha will bring us all together. This is the moment where I struggle with Mibuki. I've always struggled with Mibuki, obviously. I never really liked her as a character. She's snotty. She's very selfish. And even though I did gain some respect for her as a character during the Sentinel arc, seeing how much she protected her people, like above everything else, she made sure everybody came back alive. That was her goal. Despite people leaving the team whenever they got back, she made sure they got back and they got back alive. And in this moment, again, I struggle with her because her whole response to, seeing Keren basically struggling with something is to start firing at her. But obviously it's the whole thing of communication through combat, pushing her and saying, look, why are you moping? You shouldn't be moping. You're a hero. It was an encouragement scene, but I still struggle with it because I don't really like Mibuki that much, especially if she's firing at Keren. Best girl. But this sequence is really both of them coming to an understanding of each other. It's the clashing swords to understand each other. It's Mibuki obviously struggling with the fact that, Karen became a hero and she didn't. It's obviously her pushing Karen to reveal the struggles she's having and the fact that Karen won't let it stop her. She points out the fact that you stopped the fire offering and you did it because you guys wanted to change things. You didn't have to, but you did something. You pushed something. You were told this way was the thing that was going to happen, but you guys chose to do this thing. And by pushing her, it's making her realize you don't have to accept this. You don't have to accept the Shinkan wedding. in a sense, and later on, obviously, doesn't know about the Shinkan wedding yet, but she knows about the curse, and it's basically her telling her, look, you can change this. If Yuki Yuna is struggling with this curse, you can fix it. You guys have always pushed beyond what was required, push beyond what was going to be restricted of you, and fix things. Yeah, beyond this is when they find out about the Shinkan wedding. Obviously, Togo is upset about it. Karen becomes upset about it because all they can think about is Yuki Yuna's being married to somebody. That's not right. And obviously, Karen and Togo are part of the Yuki Yuna harem. Following this, we get the last meeting between all the Sentinels and the Taisha, and this is where Mibuki is explaining to everybody, look, we're going to be protecting the Shinkan wedding. This tower does have this power to it. We're going to use that as a cannon. It only has one shot. It always only has one shot, so we gotta make it count. But even though they're kind of getting prepared, the enemy decides that they're not going to wait for them. And so the enemy makes the first move, starts coming in, so everybody has to prepare for the battle and for the wedding right then. And then again, it goes in the whole perspective of explaining what the Shinkan wedding is. Again, the fact that the Shinkan wedding is about offering Yuki Yuna up to the divine tree as this marriage. This bond will essentially be the cornerstone for humanity to be free to join the divine and thus never be alongside the divine and never be in fear of being attacked again. But yeah, excellent episode just because, again, bias here. I love Karen, and it was really hard to watch. Watching Karen kind of break down and struggle over that was really, really strong. Granted, we got a little bit of a perspective of that with the hero chapter. We got to see some scenes where Karen was obviously struggling with the fact that she outburst to Yuki Yuna, not knowing that Yuki Yuna was struggling with something. But this is kind of seeing another perspective, seeing her go even further to the point where she was willing to go out there and challenge the gods. Like, she is that sick of it. She doesn't want to see Yuki Yuna struggle. And so if she can, she'll go out there and handle it herself because she cares so much for Yuki Yuna. Karen was obviously the tsundere character of the original series, and that was one of the reasons why I liked her so much. But she's also one of the ones that would be most willing to go out there and take on anything. Granted, every one of the characters of the original cast were fantastic, and they all had their own desires to protect something. You know, Fu was going to protect her sister. Togo would protect Yuki Yuna in the end after they'd gotten through a bunch of stuff. Everybody is willing to sacrifice something for somebody else, but Karen even more so was more headstrong and would be willing to kind of charge out there alone to take on everything. So seeing this again kind of re-sparked that love that I had for Karen. Obviously, it's been so long since we watched that original series, so long since we watched the hero chapter. A lot of that stuff is hazy for me. But this is a really nice reminder of that. And to see this interaction between Mibuki and Karen was great as well, because you always assume they hate each other. Well, I really more so Mibuki hates Karen. I don't think Karen really cared. But to see them finally come together and come to an understanding was fantastic, because it kind of gives rid of that little foggy question mark that we have regarding their relationship. And hopefully, I'm kind of hoping we'll end up seeing the two of them on the battlefield together. Again, technically from the hero chapter adaptation, we never see anything Sentinel. Again, that was a whole joke that I made several episodes before where I'm like, oh, who's the Sentinels? Wait, they're here at this time? What? We never seen Sentinels. We never heard of Sentinels. Why suddenly is there Sentinels? So hopefully we'll get to see something, some kind of interaction in there with them. Maybe possibly them seeing the heroes fighting if we don't see the heroes seeing the Sentinels. I would love to see more of them than just them sitting on boats next to the tower shooting, flying stuff. But it does have me really curious because obviously we're coming close to the end of the season. I think this was slated for 12 episodes, so we only have technically 3 more episodes to work with. That's a lot to work with, knowing that technically we're at the final battle that was of the hero chapter. So obviously we're going to probably get a pretty decently long combat sequence in this next episode, episode 10. I don't see it lasting longer than a single episode, because the original series, the hero chapter, that fight was only an episode. So what's going to go on with 11 and 12 is a big question mark. Do we finally get to see the connection that Yuki Yuna has to the other Yuna? Is there going to be something else in there regarding the Shinkan wedding that we didn't see before? That's what I'm really curious about. Maybe more information about what happens afterwards. Either way, I'm excited for it, and I'm definitely interested to see where this goes from here. Hopefully the Shinkan wedding story episode isn't too much of the same stuff. Hopefully it's not pretty much all just a bunch of scenes from the last season just replayed. I will kind of be angry if that's the case. But we'll see. That's my thoughts on Yuki Yuna as a Hero, The Great Mankai Chapter, Episode 9. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon if you can. We definitely appreciate everybody that does. Y'all take care.